Feels like it's been a really long time since I did a crafter's log, but on the bright side, that means I have a ton of interesting stuff to show you this time. If you're a returning viewer today, welcome back, you are the absolute best. And if you're new here, hello! My name is Michelle and I love to do all of the crafts, but especially the stitchy ones. On this channel you'll find cross-stitch, yarn crafts, and occasionally sewing when I'm feeling brave, along with basically whatever other craft I happen to be into at the time and think you might find interesting. In this crafter's log, we'll take a quick tour through everything I've been working on for the last couple of months, plus plans for the rest of the year, which is quite a lot of stuff, so I'll just get on with it, shall I? Alright, now when I watch other people's videos like this, floss tubes, etc., I really love hearing what they've been up to in real life. But I do know that not everybody is into that stuff, so I've put chapters along the bottom of this video and you can just skip to the sections that interest you. No worries. There is a lot of stuff to report on this time, so... First up, the Queen died the day after I recorded my last crafter's log, so that was weird. And then of course I got ill. I tried to be so grown up and I was feeling a little bit frazzled, so I posted to Instagram saying, hey, feeling a bit frazzled, might have to take a bit of a break, nobody be alarmed. But then instead of that much needed rest, I got sickness instead. Yay! Obviously there's never a good time to get ill, but you might remember that we'd been planning to open our dice shop at the start of October, so this was even worse timing than usual. Somehow we scraped together a shop launch and it involved so much last minute panic you have no idea. I've already said thank you about 1,000 times to those of you who supported us by sharing our posts or even in some cases buying dice, but thank you again because you absolutely blew our minds and it put Dave into a right flap over the international shipping, which was hilarious. I just really hope you like our dice. Okay, now, story time. I don't know how many of you follow the NFL. Probably not many, if I had to guess. But I am quite a big fan of the Green Bay Packers. And they're the only team who have never played an international game. At least until October. Yes, the Packers were coming to London and we knew it was going to be a really in-demand game and our chances of tickets were not great. But we tried. We ended up, I think, around 350,000th in the ticket queue, and we failed. Such is life. But then I got a message from a mysterious stranger on Reddit who said that not only did he have 2 tickets going spare, but he wanted to give them to us for absolutely free. Obviously, alarm bells ringing. I very nearly didn't reply to him at all because it seemed so obviously a scam. But, long story short, the upshot was his story actually checked out and I had a really good feeling about him, so we decided to go for it. The worst that could happen is we're turned away from the stadium and we have a lovely weekend in London. I'm happy to report that after a somewhat stressful morning, the tickets worked and we ended up sitting next to this amazingly generous man and his wife to watch my Packers lose horribly to the Giants. I don't care, it was brilliant. I saw Mason Crosby in real life, and I got to tick something off my bucket list. The second-hand market for those tickets was unreal, and I still can't quite get over the fact that someone was just willing to give us them for free, but I'm just so grateful. I still wasn't at 100% and I still had quite a bad cough, so it was really stressful trying to hold it in lest people think I had the plague, but all's well that ends well, and we had a lovely weekend, stayed in a really nice hotel, and had a nice night out in North London, so success. Now, as if that wasn't enough non-crafting waffle, towards the end of October it was our 10-year anniversary. And to celebrate, we decided on a trip to a city that we've not been to together before. We settled on Liverpool, and I had an idea that I might want to do a craft shop tour of the city, but unfortunately it turns out there aren't really any yarn or needlework shops anywhere near the city centre. Even the cool art supply shop that I wanted to visit had, it turned out, recently closed. I guess those kinds of businesses just aren't sustainable in a city anymore, and that's really sad, but it's also a whole other topic. Anyway, we did make it to Abercan Fabrics, which made up for it a little bit, and thank you very much to Casca and Abby for that recommendation. One other very specific thing on my bucket list has been to stay in a hotel room that is so posh it has a bathtub in the hotel room with a view out over a city. And I can tell you it was exactly as fancy as I always imagined it would be. We could only afford to stay here for one night, we're not made of money, but totally worth it. Tick! Alright, I think we might actually finally be all caught up. Time for the stuff you actually came here for. First up in cross-stitch. Technically, I have a finish. So back in maybe late August, early September, I signed up to take part in a collaborative cross-stitch animation project over on Instagram. It's hosted and named in French, and I am not about to butcher the pronunciation because I know at least one French person is going to be watching this, so instead I'll just put all the info up on the screen. I know, I'm a coward. The idea is that everyone taking part stitches up a single frame of the animation and the hosts put them all together to create the whole. Here is my contribution, which I kind of left downstairs, sorry, but I've got some nice photos of it, that's all you need, right? Unfortunately, my photos didn't end up being used. Let's just say there were logistical misunderstandings. But it's all good. It's such a tiny stitch, it took no time at all. And it was fun setting up this photo with all the dice back before we sold most of them. I really enjoyed the finished animation and looking out for my friends' ridiculous faces, especially Morty, let's be honest here. This isn't something I'll be signing up to again. I think it's definitely more of a spectator sport for me. But this fella is cute and the animations are always worth watching out for. No regrets. Alright, God knows how far into this video and I finally have the first bit of stitching that is actually here with me in person. I remember back in July or so telling you that I was going to take a nice break from stitching the block patterns in the Peppermint Purple Year of Blackwork sal, and I was going to concentrate on just casually backstitching the borders for a while instead. Somehow I failed to take into account that the stress of trying to decide which colour to do those borders would result in 3 months of decision paralysis and absolutely no progress whatsoever. Yeah. Oh well, onwards and upwards. I finally got round to doing a test of the 3 possible border colours. And I think I've decided that my favourite is the one I'd originally planned to use anyway. Sometimes I absolutely despair with myself. I think I'm gonna go with the blue. And if you disagree, please keep it to yourself because I can't live through another round of indecision like that. I just can't. I believe the block contents are up to date through May and a little bit into June, so I'm not sure exactly what number week I was on, but there's plenty to catch up on, put it that way. And of course, once the main thing is finished, I can spend all of next year umming and ahhing about what to do about the overall border. So that's something for us all to look forward to, right? Okay, Autumn Stories update. I see a lot of people working on full coverage pieces and they're like, I'm doing exactly 200 stitches each day every day and therefore I will be finished on X date. Which is all fine and good and I'm very impressed and jealous if I'm honest, but my approach is definitely a lot more as and when. Kind of no progress for weeks and weeks and then suddenly 8 hours straight where I refuse to do anything but stitch on it kind of deal. So, it was a lucky coincidence that this month I woke up one day with that mad urge to get a ton of stitches in, only to find out that it was a 24 hours of cross-stitch weekend and I'd somehow not noticed. Sadly, we did have a few plans that weekend, so I only ended up getting 12 stitches in total, but it was still nice to get a good chunk of stitching done all at once. Other than that, it's been dribs and drabs since the last update, so I have got a total of 3,375 stitches done since last time, for a grand total so far of 16,118 out of 100,500, which puts us at 16.04% overall. At this pace, I've worked out I will be finished in July 2026, which has definitely slipped a lot since the original estimate of May 2024. We'll see, right? You never know. I talked last time about my non-standard cross-country stitching on this one, and I am still really enjoying that, but I'm not gonna lie, I've come across a couple of minor flaws with that approach. The most relevant to you being that when you're working over such a large area, you can do even thousands of stitches and it turns out it basically looks like you've made no progress at all, which can make these updates kind of boring to look at. So I think what I'm going to do is once I've finished filling in this part here, I'm going to go back to doing one pattern page at a time, but with the difference that if I come to the end of the page and I still have a decent length of thread left, I will let myself cross-country with that thread until it's used up. Kind of a hybrid approach. I don't know, I'm literally just trying every method I can think of because if you don't, how will you ever know which one was best, right? It keeps me occupied, that's the main thing. For anyone seeing this for the first time, the pattern is Autumn Stories from Pain Free Crafts. I'm stitching all called for colours, 2 over 1/10 stitch on 28 count Ecru Even Weave, which is DMC brand, I believe. And I've heard a few floss tubers complain recently that people say even weave and don't give any further details, but frankly that's all I remember about this fabric, so it's gonna have to do. In my last update, we just run a small start along over on Instagram where a few of us banded together and started some Satsuma Street patterns. Being super creative people, we called it the hashtag Satsuma Start Along. My entry was the restart of Garden Cat, the first pattern I'd ever bought myself when I got into cross stitch back in 2015. And this is where we were last time after the first couple of weeks of enthusiastic stitching. Things eased off a while there, especially while I wasn't feeling well, but I'm happy to say I am back on the horse and making great progress. This is me just checking that you can actually see that. Yes, I believe you can. I keep switching from one flower to another for whatever reason, but you know what? It'll all get done, so I guess it's fine. Also, I thought the cat was complete, but only just realised a couple days ago I've not stitched his tail yet, so that's my next plan. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, uh-oh, she's gonna run into problems here, and you are not wrong. The clouds and some other parts of the pattern are white, and this fabric is kind of basically white. But I knew that from the start, and I have a couple of ideas of how to handle it. Maybe a very, very light blue or grey will do, or maybe I'll need to stick to white and do some backstitch. Or I don't know, maybe I can put something else behind the clouds to make them stand out. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because there is nothing like living in denial and just hoping for the best, right? Excellent life advice from me there. It has been a triumphant return to the rotation for this Steampunk World Map Blackwork pattern. I started this one last year, and you might recall in the last update I said it had been hibernating for a really embarrassing reason, so I'll share, but please try not to judge me, okay? So I thought this pattern would be the perfect candidate for a time-lapse video. One cog appearing at a time to make the whole thing, right? But that meant I would need to take every progress shot in the same lighting and from the same distance. Luckily, we do own a light box, so I just brought that downstairs, set it up next to my crafting couch, and got to work. So far, so good. But as anyone who has ever done literally anything in their life knows, that initial burst of speed and enthusiasm doesn't always last. So I kind of stopped working on it a little bit, and the light box inevitably ended up being tidied away, which meant I then felt like I couldn't work on it anymore because I'd already put so much effort into making the first phase of the time-lapse, and I didn't want to work on it if I wasn't taking the photos. But I didn't want to take the photos because I didn't want to bring the light box back down from upstairs because I knew I would leave it in the middle of the floor for weeks and it would be a mess and super annoying. So yes, long story short, it was a whole thing. I got in my head about it, and I don't even know what to tell you beyond that. I'm sure you are totally surprised by this new insight into how badly I overthink everything. So to sum up, after basically an entire year, I finally got round to bringing the very light and easy to move and no trouble at all light box back downstairs. It was no big deal, the mess didn't annoy Dave, and honestly it was kind of handy to use as a table while I was making all those floss drops. I just don't know what all that was about. I will make that time lapse one day though, I swear. In the meantime, I've got a decent amount done on Europe and Asia, and I'm loving how it's coming together. These are just the called for colours. I love them so much there was no point substituting, and it's going to look great in the living room one day on our green walls. The pattern is Steampunk World Map from Circle Cross, and I'm stitching single strand on that same 28 count ecru even weave. I think that is actually all the stitching I have to show. It's been a while since I put any patterns out over on Ko-fi, and part of my plans for next year is to start using that more. So I thought a little Christmas freebie pattern would be a good place to start, and I've been working on designing that, but I'm not quite at the stitching stage yet. Leaving it a bit last minute, I know, but what do you expect from me? Come on. I don't think there'll be any kind of dedicated tutorial video to go with this one, so you'll just have to keep an eye out on my Ko-fi and Instagram if you want to know when that goes live. Okay, it is about time I did some shoutouts to other channels. I keep skipping this, not because I'm an awful person who doesn't like spreading the love, but just because I get really paranoid that my videos are way too long. But we're not going to worry about that today, we're just going to spread the love. I'll do a couple of shoutouts after each section, so since we're just wrapping up cross stitch, flosstube as it is. First up, Stitchy Cat Lady 26. Jo always has some interesting stitches on the go, including the absolutely huge Planet Dragons by Heaven and Earth Designs, and plus she's just a genuinely lovely person. She also, as you might gather from the channel name, loves cats. And right now she's actually raising money for the cat shelter where she volunteers via a Facebook fundraiser. If you want to get in on that action, support a great cause and be entered into the raffle for a stitched bat ornament, I'll link the fundraiser as well as her channel in the description below. And now I really must also mention Kelsey over at X Stitch and Chill, or are we pronouncing it Cross Stitch and Chill? You tell me. Who I follow on Instagram but didn't actually realise she has a YouTube channel until she gave me a lovely shout out and pinged me in that video description. So, first of all, well played, great networking. But also I love her videos. She reminds me a lot of me, which coincidentally is exactly what she said about me as well, but it's totally true. There's just that slight awkwardness that I find very relatable. Great projects too, which I guess is probably what most of you are going to be more interested in. Her channel is really new but growing pretty fast and honestly deserved. Alright, knit and crochet. In my last update we talked about autumn and winter crafting plans. And I had it all worked out in my head. I was going to start with the Justina jumper and work my way up to the shanty pocket shawl, which wouldn't be started until about November or so. Well, that is so not how any of that worked out. The day after recording telling you all about those plans was the day we lost the Queen, and I'm not like one of these rah monarchy type people, but she's just always been the Queen, you know? It was a really weird day. So I needed something calming to do with my hands, and casting on a jumper that involved counting didn't really fit the bill, but crocheting basically a massive rectangle, that I could do. Since then, it's been by far my most worked on project because it's just so mindless. And see this ribbing? I did that in the car on a night journey in pitch darkness, and I didn't lose a single stitch. Very proud. So I finished this a few days ago and even weaved in all the ends and everything, which is so unlike me. But what I've not finished yet is the twisted fringe. Actually, most of it is just regular tassels at the moment. It turns out these twisted ones do look great, but they take ages and I just haven't found a comfortable position to do them in yet, so I'm just doing a couple at a time as and when I get chance. They're also currently all different lengths, but I'm hoping once I'm done, I can fairly easily shorten the two long ones. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. This does technically break the letter of the no more shawls rule, but not the spirit of that rule, which was to stop me from making lacy, weird coloured things that I had no idea how to wear and to this day just live in a pile on the bottom of my wardrobe. This shawl is a practical shawl. It's got pockets. It's basically an honorary cardigan. Shanty Pocket Shawl by Denny Sharp. You know you want one. I also seem to recall making grand claims last time about my ability to knit an entire pair of socks before Halloween. You might have been understandably skeptical about this, but actually, I totally finished one sock. And also, I haven't grafted the toes together, it turns out, which I did not realise when I picked it up to film this, but I'll do that after filming and I'll post a photo to prove that I did. Yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't plan on getting sick, okay? It really put a spanner in the works. The awesome seasonally appropriate yarn is Purple Pumpkin by Bellwether Yarns, and I found this sock pattern, Aquaphobia Socks by Crystal Flanagan, when I was searching for something designed especially for a yarn like this. The idea is that the slip stitch pattern helps break up any unwanted pooling from the variegated yarn. And I have to say, looking through the project gallery, it's definitely more successful on some yarns than others. But honestly, I don't even mind pooling, I just wanted to see what would happen, and I'd say it sort of worked. The problem, of course, is that now Halloween is over and autumn is basically over too, and the motivation to make that second sock is non-existent. Maybe it'll come back and I'll finish these at a totally unseasonal time of year, or maybe I'll put them in a bag and forget about it until next October when I have to finish everything in a rush and hate myself. Place your bets! I've talked to a few people recently who have questions about sock knitting or are trying to work their way up to it. So one of my upcoming videos is going to be a look at exactly how hand knit socks are constructed, tips for getting started, what knitting skills you need before diving in, that sort of thing. So if you have any specific questions about knitting socks that you'd like me to answer in that video, do leave it in a comment or DM me, whatever works, and I will do my best to clear things up for you. Alright, so since the pocket shawl is finished, I let myself cast on the Justina jumper. I am absolutely in love with this green. This is Paintbox Yarn's Wool Mix Aran, and I've never used it before, so can't really vouch for it beyond the colour being gorgeous, and it's so far being really nice to knit with. The problem with this pattern is I completely failed to notice that it needs much bigger needles than I own. The biggest size it calls for is 10mm, and the biggest size I own is 8. So a little bit of a problem when you're trying to make an actual wearable garment, as you might expect. But I've done some swatching and some maths, and I think what I'm going to be able to do is knit the extra large version of this pattern with my tighter tension, and it should work out kind of okay, I think. Obviously this isn't something I'd try with something that was much more fitted, but this is a casual fit jumper and I just feel like I can probably wangle it and make any tweaks I need to along the way. Worst case scenario, I get up to the split for the armpits and I realise it's not working and I just have to frog it and actually invest in some bigger needles. No harm, no foul. In the meantime, I'm really loving it. It's fairly mindless. I've only made a terrible mistake and had to frog a load of it once so far, which is pretty good going for me, 3 inches into a project. Long may it continue. So, yarn craft shoutouts. First up, Abby at Blue Heart Crochet is, I think, the first ever non-cross-stitch craft vlogger I followed here on YouTube. As the channel name suggests, crochet is her main topic and she makes all kinds of really cute amigurumi, but she does dabble in knitting as well from time to time. Abby is one of the Liverpool natives who who advised me on craft shops or lack thereof for our recent trip, so thank you very much for the insider knowledge there. Unfortunately though, her spare room is already booked up for Eurovision. I already tried. Don't even bother. Next is the Athenian Maker. Now, technically Aida does a lot of sewing and cool printmaking techniques as well, but I actually followed her on Instagram back in the day for her knitting. We share a love of geometric patterns in our knitting and a small waist, massive hips issue in our sewing, so plenty of crossover there. Her YouTube channel is relatively new and very small, so I'm sure she would appreciate anyone interested in these kinds of crafts popping over and saying hello. Plus, you get to learn about what it's like being a fibre crafter in Greece, which is always interesting, right? Alright, so the last video I put out was all about the ridiculous Halloween crafts that Dave and I had fun with in the run-up to our annual Spooktacular. We made air-dry clay ghosts, we cut out spooky silhouettes for the lamps, made origami bats, and I needle felted the cutest pumpkin ever. So you've already seen those. The air-dry pumpkin turned out a bit too unintentionally football themed, but I think what I might do is paint a thinner black line down the middle of these white segments here to make it just look a little bit less sporty. Apart from that though, it's been quite quiet on the other crafts front. I had planned by now to have sewn a skirt from a tablecloth that I picked up at a charity shop a few months ago, but of course I got ill and that went out the window and now I have no idea when that's gonna get done. It is what it is. We have been working on some new dice designs. This one is an experiment in using that shaved ice glitter that I used to make the blue and white needle minder a couple months back and seeing how that stuff behaved in dice. Answer, it goes sparkly. Who'd have thought? These ones are a Christmassy remix of our Wild Magic set, which were in fact the very first dice to sell the minute we opened the shop. These are made by a process called hydro dipping. Essentially, the special inks float on top of water and you marble them up a bit. Then you dip a white blank and let it dry. Then we cast the patterned blank in clear resin to add the numbers and protect the paint. It's trickier than it sounds. We've not quite got the process down yet, but it does make for some cool patterns. And the last one I want to show you is this. Maybe a year or so ago, Dave tried to make what he was imagining as coffee dice, and I insist on thinking of as hot chocolate dice because coffee is rank. But we weren't super experienced, and what we actually got was more like half-sucked brown flavour ice pop dice. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of ice pops and I do want to eat these every time I see them, but it's just not quite what we were going for. So imagine our pride when these ones turned out exactly as per the original vision. Practice makes perfect and all that. Okay, what else? I feel a bit guilty for not having a ton of other crafts to show this time, but I do have some Christmas plans, so let me distract you with those. Not giving you any specifics, but I have bought quite a large quantity of this fabric, and I have an order on for some polystyrene balls. More shout-outs! Retro Craft Dreams is a new channel by the adorably dorky Lindsay. I absolutely love it and I highly recommend. Her channel is all about vintage needlework patterns, kits and inspiration, especially from the 70s and 80s. So her first couple of videos have been really interesting to someone who doesn't know anything about the wider crafting world before like 2013. Plus, there are regular cat interruptions and who doesn't like a good channel cat? Maybe this shout out should have been in the flosstuber section now I think about it, but of Lindsay's first two videos, 50% of them were instead about making really creepy, disturbing pumpkin monsters out of beads. So miscellaneous other crafts it is! And finally, you've heard her mentioned a few times recently, but I do have to give an official shout out to Crafting with Casca. Not only has she been helping me with all kinds of sewing questions and Liverpool Insider questions, not only has she just hit 1,000 subs, which is really exciting and congratulations again, but she made the most amazingly epic Halloween costume this year. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but seriously, finish this video and then go look. Casca's channel is mostly focused on sewing and cosplay with a Victorian theme, but she also dabbles in other crafts, including, on at least one occasion, learning to cross-stitch. So if watching someone make all kinds of noob mistakes in a craft that you're really good at appeals, again, go look. Alright, so I guess goals-wise, the same kind of applies as last time. I'm working through the plan to make myself some nice toasty clothes and accessories for winter in an effort to keep heating bills down. Not dystopian at all. The shawl is done, for a given value of done, but that leaves the jumper, the hat and gloves still to do, as well as any festive projects I may or may not be planning. But my other goal is to move on to the next stage of running this channel, which is sustainability. This year was mostly focused on getting monetized because frankly I can't afford to buy a ton of craft supplies unless I'm making at least some pocket money in return. But as I mentioned in the recent craft room tour video, achievement unlocked! We are officially making self-sustaining craft supply money. Now I just need to somehow times that by 10 and maybe I can even pay some bills with it. A girl can dream. Anyway, now I can focus more on getting into more of a sustainable weekly rhythm with these videos. It's something that I sometimes succeed at for a few weeks in a row, but inevitably something comes up and just knocks me off my game. I expect no one really cares about the specifics of this, but basically I have a plan. It's going to make things a lot less stressful for me, as well as upping the general quality of the channel. So it's a win-win. But in the short term, it does mean I might miss a week here and there while I get this new plan sorted out. So just please bear with. Okay, that is probably it as far as crafters logs go, at least until the new year, because no doubt this time next month I will be knee-deep in some top secret Christmas crafting. But that's okay, because I have plenty of other videos planned for you to see out the year. I'll be back soon with some more crafty nonsense, so in the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff. Bye!